The place looks pretty much the same. At least one can see the skeleton of its former self underneath all the finery. I've been coming here periodically since the early 1970s, back when I was in high school and my brother was learning to fly RC planes. Dad would load up the family car, a 1969 Ford Galaxy 500, and drive us out to Albuquerque's West Mesa. We'd take Interstate 40 west across the Rio Grande and exit onto Coors Road, a lonely two-lane blacktop that threaded its way north along the dusty sandhills of the city's volcanic escarpment. Now, the entire area is built up into the usual urban sprawl, but back then it was the sticks, on the edge of nowhere. I generally just don't have time for social media, of all the different kinds of social media. It's all I can do to maintain a blog, a YouTube channel, and answer email. I just don't see the point in Facebook, Twitter, and all the other forms of social media. Blogging was one of the first kinds of social media. It's been around for several decades, but it seems like it's on the wane. It's not as popular as it once was. It's been relegated with newer forms of social media. But I've been blogging since 2006. Man, that is 11 years I've been maintaining a blog. That's over a decade. The power of blogging is that it's archivable and searchable as a web page. Google or some other search engine can go back through all your blog posts and find all the content, and people can search the internet and find your past articles. Blogging is different from other forms of newer types of social media in that regards. It's catalogable. It's like a library with the old card catalog, the Dewey Decimal System, and you go in there and you search something, you find the number, you go down through the shelves, and you can pull up the article. That's what blogging is like. We'd turn left at the Circle K store, the last outpost of civilization, then right onto a Trisco Road, now renamed Unser Boulevard, and up the volcanic escarpment, then a sharp left onto a rough, bone-jarring dirt road, past a water storage tank and riding stables, into the George J. Maloof Memorial Airpark, Albuquerque's model airplane flying field. I've written hundreds, maybe 400 or 500 blog articles in my 11 years of blogging, and not all of them have been serious pieces of pseudo-journalism. A lot of the articles are just little observations, weekly updates, or whatever. But there's been a few pieces that have been more serious attempts at essays, if you will, private journalism, mainly to do with topics or issues that are really interesting to me. And one of these blog articles that I wrote years ago involves the model airplane flying field out on the West Mesa of Albuquerque, the George J. Maloof Memorial Airpark, and how me, my dad, and my brother had been coming to that flying field since the early 1970s. And I wrote a little piece about it on my blog with some photographs, like an essay, like the kind of a story you might once have seen in Life magazine or Look. So back in the early 1970s, my next oldest brother got interested in model airplanes and wanted to learn to fly radio control. And Dad allowed him to do this, and so we would all pile into the family car and drive out Interstate 40 to this little exit called Coors Road, a little two-lane blacktop road, head north, take a left at the Circle K, hit a Trisco road that ran along the base of the volcanic escarpment on the West Mesa of Albuquerque, drive up this little 2-lane blacktop road that wound its way up the volcanic escarpment to the top where there was a water storage tank, an old dude ranch, horse stables basically, and this bone-jarring dirt road that leads you out to the model airplane flying field, which was 2 blacktop rectangles of asphalt, one dedicated for control line flying, and the other one for radio control. And we would spend weekends out there. I would watch my brother learn to fly, crash airplanes, have to rebuild them, come back out, fly some more. And I was always kind of a hangers-on. I never flew myself, but I was always peripherally interested in that hobby. So then, decades later, almost half a century later, it's 2016, and the model airplane flying field is in a state of disrepair, and it needs city funding to restore it and to expand its facilities, lengthen the runway, add another runway, et cetera, in order to enable it to be more viable. And so a group of concerned citizens began to petition the city council for this cause. And in the course of their research about the model airplane flying field, one of the members of this group happened to do some online Googling and discovered my blog article that I had written about a decade ago. And they emailed me, contacted me, and wanted to know if they could use the pictures and text in their presentation to the city council about petitioning the city for more funds. And this is the power of blogging. If I had made mention of this in some Twitter tweet or a little 140 character message on wherever, or a Facebook article, maybe a Facebook entry, a 1 or 2 lines, if I had done that, it never would have gained any attention. Or if I had posted pictures on Instagram of the model airplane flying field, it might have been peripherally interesting, but it never would have been searchable as a Google article that actually contains an essay of personal experience and personal reflections on the model airplane flying field. But the power of blogging is that you're essentially publishing your own private one-off magazine articles is what it's like. It's like having a magazine and publishing your own articles that are searchable by everybody and they can find them and read them again. So as a consequence of the work that this group did, they published this presentation, this pamphlet, this booklet, and presented it to the city council. And in here is the history of the park and the proposal for how to expand it and improve the facilities. And in this 58-page booklet, there is a section that has reproduced my blog article, and this is the only testimony, written testimony presented to the city government that has personal reflections upon the value of the flying field to the public. And that was my article called Center of Gravity. And as a consequence of the efforts that this group put forward, the city has invested money to restore and expand the flying field. The main north-south runway is now been lengthened and much longer than it was, and there are plans now for an east-west runway and improved facilities otherwise. They're going to redo the control line section. They're going to add drones and helicopter flying areas. I'm not saying that my blog article was instrumental in getting the city to put money forward for this project. But what I am saying is whatever influence my personal recollection of the flying field had, it was only possible because it was a blog article. It was searchable, it was indexable on Google or other search engines. Other people could find it and read it. That's the power of blogging. It's journalism in the hands of private people. The pilots, they were and are the heart of the flying field, the reason why it exists. There were old guys that my brother and I knew back then, a few of them instrumental in teaching my brother to fly. They were like older brothers, mentors to us. We watched them age, and now many of them have passed on. A second and third and fourth generations of pilots have come, now populating the field with the aroma of nitromethane and castor oil, the buzz of glow engines and four-strokes, and the vacuum cleaner-like whine of ducted fan engines. The rhythm of the flying field was only noticed when you spend some time, at least a few hours, standing in the sun watching the activity. The action waxes and wanes. One moment there will be 3, sometimes 4 planes in the air at once, their pilots constantly jockeying to avoid a mid-air collision, while a few moments later there will be left the sole pilot on the flight line, the lonesome whine of his aircraft against the blue sky like a distant bird seeking something mysterious in the freedom of the air on a calm Sunday morning. The others, they will congregate around the picnic tables or fiddle with their planes and toolboxes, idly chatting with the camaraderie that comes from a common skill and experience. And then, minutes later, the quiet will be shattered once again as they fuel up their birds, spin their props, fiddle with their engines, and pierce the clear air. They talk, I watch them fly, and then finally I get back on my bike, underway once more in the afternoon breeze, freedom in my wings, and depart the flying field. I don't know when I'll be back, but somehow I'm tethered here like those old control line planes flying within the limited freedom of their circle, free but captive, arriving, departing, then arriving again, endlessly, tethered to their center of gravity.